Welcome back to another season of the Next Generation Design Podcast. I'm Jennifer Piper. For the past 3 seasons, you've heard me as your host. Today, I'm going to be handing over the hosting reins to your new host, Greg Arnott, Product Marketing Manager at Siemens Digital Industries Software. Thank you all for a wonderful experience these past few years. Now over to you, Greg.
Thank you, Jen, for looking after the podcast over the last years. We wish you all the best in your next venture, wherever it may take you. I'm Greg Arnott, Product Marketing Manager on the NX Marketing team. I'm happy to be hosting this season of the Next Generation Design podcast. In this 4th season, we're excited to welcome some incredible guests on the podcast. Over the next few episodes, we'll be exploring trending topics in design, such as immersive engineering with Sony, the importance of an open strategy for NX, AI in CAD as well as NXX, the SaaS version of NX. We'll then be joined by guests from Rensselaer Motorsport, Aeralis, Firefly Aerospace, Siemens Real Estate, NextSpirit, Phoenix Contact, MTU Aero Engines, and Maestro Design. Before we close out the season talking sustainability with our very own Aaron Devola. We're looking forward to this next season and hope that you'll be tuning in. On today's episode, I'm joined by Ben Widdowson, Head of Marketing for Immersive Engineering for NX at Siemens, and Henry Kondo, Deputy General Manager for XR Business Development at Sony. Before we begin, let's say hi to today's guests. Let's start with you, Ben. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and your role at Siemens?
Hi, Greg. Great to be here. I am the Head of Marketing for Immersive Engineering here at Siemens. I work within the NX Product Marketing team, and we've been leading the collaboration with Sony, including Henry here, for a number of years now, building up to the launch of NX Immersive Designer and the Sony XR head-mounted display at the end of this year.
Henry, welcome to the show. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what you do at Sony?
My name is Henry Kondo from Sony Corporation. I'm based in Tokyo, Japan. And I'm now leading the Sony's XR business of head-mount display and also the 3D display business. And I'm watching the business and the technologies and the marketing, everything for XR. And also I'm leading the collaboration with Siemens company and Sony.
Thank you both. Now, I'd like to dive right into today's subject. At Siemens, we believe that the next generation of design will be immersive. From your perspective, what has visualization and product design software looked like over the years, and how has it evolved?
So in the 3D design world, we often use tools called CAD or computer-aided design, and these have evolved originally from layout drawings that were traditionally done with pen and paper. So evolving from pen and paper to computers was a big step, and from pen and papers we went from computers, which were generally 2D layouts, to 3D, but these were very simplistic forms. And over the years, we've been able to, with the help of increased computational power, increase the accuracy, quality, realism of the visualization. Now, there's always been a bit of a trade-off here. You could either get a very nice-looking picture, which took a long time to render, or you can use a technique that they use in games, which is where you get a very nice picture in real time, but the quality is maybe reduced. It's not ray traced. But over the years, this has become not the case. So using technologies like RTX, we're now able to render things in real time, very accurately, and even now in technologies like virtual reality and immersive technology. So you can actually see these things in real time as if you were stood in the room with them.
Thank you, Ben. So we are Sony, also very focused on that kind of visualization technologies, especially XR and virtual reality world. Comparing to the previous workflow or previous people's design process, currently the new design process becomes more virtual world, and people are using the visualization technology in the virtual world, means 3D world. People can easily understand the more real object as a real size and real feelings.
We've heard so much about the industrial metaverse lately. Can you explain for our listeners what exactly that is and how it's shaping the world and technology?
We see the industrial metaverse as a way to bring together the most comprehensive digital twin of your production process or your product, but also bring it together with real-time data from the actual product or process itself. So not only can you simulate the product with real-world physics and very accurate visualizations, but you can also start to bring in things like the factory production statistics or the sales statistics. So you can start to do things like control your production facility or interact with your digital twin in real time. And one of the other big pieces that we see in the industrial metaverse is the ability to use collaboration. So being able to see the same product or same process at the same time with other people, even if they're not co-located with you. So we think this is going to really help change the way that designers work and the way that products are made in the future.
From Sony side, in terms of the industrial metaverse, so the most important thing is how we can convey the reality of the real world to the metaverse world. For example, that our kind of very accurate display technologies can really can realize the real world objects from the real to the metaverse, and also our interaction, including our unique controller, can convey the feeling like a really touching object. This year, we announced that our new XR headset with Siemens. So that's very important to consider when we consider the industrial metaverse. So because as I mentioned, so how realize the real world the object in the display. So that's very important. So we have a unique 4K micro OLED technologies. So that's really great precise display. And also in terms of the interaction wise, we have a pointing controller and also the ring shaped controller. Those two controllers can convey the real feelings very intuitively.
Henry, what can you tell me about the future of engineering? For you and for Sony, what does that look like?
I think that, yes, engineering is changing drastically by using the XR technologies. So originally the people designed the object in the screen and can produce the products after that. But now engineering is changing the real timely and connected people and in the virtual world. So that becomes reducing the time for engineering, and also the more people are connected to the world in engineering.
The announcement of the Sony headset by Siemens and Sony took many by surprise. How did the Siemens and Sony collaboration come about, and why?
So Sony has been a customer of Siemens for a number of years now, using our product engineering tools like NX within their engineering divisions. And I believe at Realize Live earlier this year, we announced that Sony saw a 30% increase in productivity to moving to NX from a competitive CAD tool. And a number of the teams were then thinking, okay, well, what's that next step in productivity? And the Sony teams came up with the idea for this new, very high-end mixed reality workflow using a new headset that they were planning to develop. And they approached Siemens to see whether we'd be interested in collaborating as one of their software partners. And this was maybe 3 years ago. And now here we are today, post CES, and we're due to launch later this year. So we're very excited about this increased partnership with Sony and the fact that they're also a very, very good customer of ours.
This collaboration started almost 3 years ago. So at the beginning, we Sony customer of the Siemens originally. So because our engineering division and our designer using the Siemens NX software to produce Sony's products like TV or camera or audio. So such important Sony products were produced by a Siemens NX software. That's why we started collaboration with Siemens. And also, of course, that by using our unique technology plus Siemens software technology. Those combination is very important, we think, because we Sony has a quite unique expertise about hardware, and also Siemens has a software and also the software platform expertise very hugely. So those combination becomes the software and hardware mixed power.
What were the business challenges that started the development of NX Immersive Designer and the Sony XR head-mounted display?
So Siemens has had virtual reality capabilities within NX for many years now. But one of the limitations we've always found is that any headset that's connected to any tool is generally limited to viewing data. So you can pop open an immersive view, you can walk around data, you can move parts around, but you're always very limited in being able to do any meaningful engineering work within the environment. And for us and our customers, that was the real key piece that we wanted to change with this collaboration with Sony. So as we were collaborating to work on the headset and work on the software, the biggest piece that we wanted to make sure was that the hardware was really tightly integrated into the software so that we could unlock these new workflows and allow engineers to actually start to create and edit and manipulate geometry within the immersive environment. So that's the underlying ethos or philosophy behind Immersive Designer. And this is what we're really excited to get into the hands of our customers. And we think this is going to be the biggest change that people will see compared to their existing VR experiences.
From Sony side, so we are Sony. We thinking it's a big challenge for Sony as well to do this XR business because we originally Sony do our hardware business by ourselves, only ourselves. Like Sony created a TV, Sony created a Walkman, and Sony created a camera. And also the Sony will sell those products by ourselves. So that's originally Sony we do. But for this new challenge for XR, we produce the hardware, but we do not have a software, and also we do not have a kind of a customer base for industry metaverse areas. So the collaboration between Siemens and Sony is also the business challenge for us. So so that's why we need more communication with your company. So, for example, at Siemens Realize Live events, we, Sony, joined the meeting and do collaboration together with Siemens. So that's just the beginning. We started this year, but continuously we do this collaboration and make the business more bigger. That's a challenge, but I hope this could be a big potential for Sony's new business.
Henry, would you explain for our listeners what XR is and how it's different from AR, VR, and MR?
This virtual reality world starts from VR. So VR is covering the real world and just virtual images. And AR, next, AR is coming. AR is augmented reality. AR is like you can imagine the glass type things, products. The glass is basically can see the 100% real world by see-through glass. Plus that just adding some information for digitally. So now that becomes a mixed reality, MR. MR is between the VR and AR. So the display is capturing by a camera, and the camera captured image is mixed in the VR goggles. So it's not 100% virtual. It's not 100% real. It's kind of mix of the virtual and real. That's a MR. So we think that those kind of historical changes happen. VR, AR, MR. That's why we combine everything, XR.
I'd now like to talk more specifically about the technology of the Sony XR head-mounted display and NX Immersive Designer. First, what makes the hardware unique? What makes it different from other VR headsets on the market?
Our XR head-mounted display, which we just announced that this January CES, is very unique features compared to the other existing head-mounted display. So we had three features, three characteristics than the other companies' products. First is the 4K micro OLED display. 4K means 4K per eye. So we combined 4K plus 4K to the 8K. We name 8K 4K per eye. So that's realize very accurate display and very precise resolution. Resolution number is 55 ppd. 55 ppd means a pixel per degree. So people's 1 degrees can realize 55 pixels. So those high density display is our biggest value of our hexaheterometer display. And the second is controllers. We have two unique controllers. One is a pointing controller, like a triangle shape pen type controller. That's very accurate operation. We can realize accurate operation for CAD designer and mechanical designer. And the other controller is ring shape controller. It's like a ring shape. And that's makes more intuitive controlling. So we have precise and intuitive controller. Those mix is our uniqueness of interaction. The lastly, we have real and virtual connection. That's important seamlessly. So how seamlessly we realize real and virtual connection is we have a flip up and flip down functionality, and also that we have video see-through camera technologies.
From an engineering perspective, would you say this is physics-based?
Yes, it's physics-based.
So being physics-based, then it considers factors like gravity, collision detection, and realistic motion. Ben, how is this different from previous VR and AR visualization tools that were available in NX?
Within NX, we've had virtual reality tools for a number of years now, and we've supported many of the mainstream headsets, and we still do. The biggest challenge we've always had is that they've always been limited to just viewing the data. So that was the big piece that we wanted to take here from a specific collaboration with Sony, was that we can integrate the hardware right into the software and allow the engineers to actually manipulate, edit, create geometry in real time within NX. So that's the major difference. I think what Sony's bringing to the market in terms of their hardware also, as Kondo-san mentioned, is this real focus on enabling creators. So, we see our customers as creators. They're creating, cars, planes, trains, boats, buildings in NX every day. And we think that the intuitive nature of the controllers that Henry mentioned, the precision of the pointing controller, and the intuitiveness of the ring controller is going to enable customers to interact with their data in ways that they haven't before. So being able to precisely make those changes like blends and edits and pull faces on the geometry, but also being able to virtually pick up the objects out of the NX screen and inspect them. Or even if it's a large object, being able to actually walk around the space or really get that sense of human scale. And that's one thing that's very difficult to communicate in any marketing videos or in any kind of imagery or writing or stage presentations, is that real sense of being immersed in the environment with the product. That's something that you can only experience when you try it. So we're very excited for customers to start to try this technology as it rolls out towards the end of the year.
Can you expand a bit more on how it works with NX? How seamless is the connection and what are the benefits?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll just take in terms of how customers can access it, because we've tried to make it as easy as possible. So everything will be purchased from Siemens directly, the hardware and the software. You will be able to buy a base seat of NX, and you'll access the module which is called NX Immersive Designer through what we call value-based licensing. So this is the ability to buy a set of tokens from Siemens, and you can then activate different software modules by switching them on and off without having to purchase them separately. So NX Immersive Designer is one of these modules, and it will be available later this year along with the headset itself. So in terms of how customers will actually be able to use it, it's plug and play. So once the headset is connected to your PC, you will hit a single button within NX and it will launch NX Immersive Designer, and you will instantly be in the immersive view. As Henry mentioned, you'll be able to be in a completely virtual reality view where the entire space is CGI and virtual, including the virtual design objects that you're working on. Or you can use the video see-through technology, which will allow you to actually see the space, the real world space around you, and start to bring virtual objects in. So if you can imagine being in the office where you are now, Greg, and actually bringing in a virtual object of the design you're making and being able to see it and spin it around in front of you, we think that's going to be a real game changer compared to just interacting on the screen in front of you. But all of this is going to be incredibly intuitive and very, very easy to use, and it'll be connected directly into NX.
Can you expand a bit on value-based licensing for our listeners?
For customers to access these immersive capabilities that we've been developing with Sony, we wanted to make that as easy as possible. So customers who have a seat of NX, they can also buy something called value-based licensing, which is our suite of capabilities that are able to be switched on and off very flexibly using tokens. So NX Immersive Designer, which is the software module that leverages the Sony XR head-mounted display, is available through value-based licensing. And any customers that are using value-based licensing today will get access to that immediately and will only have to buy the headset, so there's no additional software purchase. But if you're not using value-based licensing today, I would highly recommend that that's something you look into if you're interested in taking advantage of this new collaboration between Siemens and Sony.
I've been watching some of the publicity videos, and I must admit, I've been fascinated by those hand controllers. I'm curious, how do these controllers work, and how does the ring come into play?
Traditionally, designers will operate a 3D CAD system like NX using a mouse or a space mouse and their keyboard. So it's a combination of keys and interaction with the mouse to spin the model around, typing in numbers into displays, into dialogues. We don't expect that this is going to change overnight. This is very much ingrained habits for engineers. So the Sony team is aware of this and very considerate of how engineers work today. So the controllers are designed to be used in conjunction with traditional methods like a mouse and keyboard. So things like the ring actually allow you to still operate your keyboard or your mouse at the same time. But they also, without having to take them on and off, give you the instant ability to interact with your model in a more immersive way. So whether that's moving the object around in front of you, walking around it, or actually starting to manipulate parts of the geometry. So the controllers are very specifically designed for content creators and with existing work methods in mind. And we think this really differentiates it from the other HMDs on the market, where traditionally they have a more general purpose set of controllers which have to cater for all sorts of use cases like gaming, entertainment, and of course work. But these are very much specifically designed for content creators, which is very different and unique.
When it comes to combining the real and digital worlds, how easily can one switch between them with this Sony XR head-mounted display?
Siemens has talked for a long time about combining the real and the digital worlds and enabling you to create the most comprehensive digital twin. So NX is often the starting point for where you're creating these virtual objects. And traditionally, if you were interacting with your 3D design on the 2D monitor in front of you, this is how most people would consume that 3D data until it was prototyped or made. With the new Sony XR HMD, you're now able to experience that product or process much, much earlier in that process, in that production process, because you can put the headset on, you can actually walk around the object, you can pick it up, you can pull it apart, you can interact with it, you can play simulations like Mechatronics Mechatronics Concept Designer. So you can get a real sense of how the product is going to look, feel, and work before you make any of those prototypes. So, one of the big advantages there, of course, is that you can do a lot of that thinking, a lot of that exploration before you make any physical products. Now, of course, physical prototyping still has its place and it's very important, but if you can make these decisions a lot earlier in the design process without having to make those prototypes, not only is that a lot faster, but it saves a huge amount of time, resource, and materials for companies that are making these products. And I know that was one of the big drivers for the Sony engineering team as well, to really reduce the number of prototypes they were making and speed up that process. But the other critical thing is that, not everybody is a trained, experienced CAD user. It's a very specialist skill set. Traditionally, it's, the preserve of engineers. But often engineers and designers aren't the only people in the decision-making process. So being able to bring other stakeholders, whether they're executives or manufacturing people or customers even, into these design reviews in a much more natural way where they don't have to worry about any of the controls within the CAD system. They can just experience the product or the process within the headset. It also helps with that decision-making process. So you can get much more visual and visceral information and feedback from these stakeholders much earlier in the process, which, again, we hope will lead to better products and better processes for everybody over time.
Henry, how do you see this technology and the Sony-Siemens partnership changing engineering workflows?
We designed our new products and the software by Sony's engineer. So Sony's engineer is a kind of designer and also the users of this technology. And I believe that our new solution, XR head-to-mount display plus NX combination, makes the Sony's engineers work more futuristic. Meaning we can realize that the more shorter time to design the new products, new Sony's products, and also that we can do the more accurate design in the virtual world. Means that before the virtual engineering, we must create kind of a mock-up, like a crane mock-up or kind of plastic mock-up to check the product. But now our engineer can check the product in the screens, more real size and intuitivity. So that makes a shorter time for design. Shorter time means kind of more trial and more new products can be produced by our engineer.
I'm going to give you two more examples of customers we've given early access previews to for the technology. So one in aerospace and one in automotive, and they've got some quite interesting and different use cases. So firstly, in aerospace, we have a customer called Nautilus based out of San Diego in the US, and they're making a new blended wing body design aircraft, both for cargo and in future for passenger use as well. And these guys haven't built their first plane yet. They're in the process of getting the plane certified. But within their hangar space where they're starting to build aspects of the plane, they really wanted to know that the full-scale plane was going to fit through the doors and fit within the hangar itself. So being able to see that digital twin in an immersive view using mixed reality so they can see the real hangar around them, they can place the full-scale virtual aeroplane within the hangar. They were able to actually test very, very quickly whether the airplane was going to fit through the doors and also whether it was going to fit with all the machinery and tools around them. So that's quite specific to those guys, but an incredibly valuable use case because it's the difference between maybe changing premises or having to think about finding somewhere else to make the plane. But the other really interesting thing that I saw when we first put the headset on the engineers at Nautilus was none of the discussion was about NX or the headset or any of the technology. Immediately, the engineers were just straight into, oh my God, I didn't realize how big our plane was because they've not built one yet. So they've been used to consuming this data on a 2D monitor in front of them. So it was the first time they'd actually seen the full-sized object that they're working on day in, day out at human scale. And they were all blown away by the actual size of it because you just don't get that from a 2D screen. And straight away, they were diving into engineering decisions that they could have made differently. So that to me was really validating and very, very, very interesting. One of the use case from another company, another customer in the automotive space, excuse me, a company called Briggs Automotive, BAC, here in the UK. Their engineering teams are actually split between two locations. They have a team in the UK and a team in Germany. And one of their biggest challenges is they often have to bring engineers from one site to the other to do design reviews and actually looking at the physical assembly of the vehicle. So the biggest use case for those guys is being able to speed up that decision-making process, bringing those stakeholders together virtually to collaborate and view a virtual object and make those design decisions. But also because they're making custom cars for each of their customers, being able to bring the customer into that design process much earlier as well, so that they can see exactly what they're buying, how it's going to come together, make any minor design decisions along with the engineers. So two quite different but really interesting use cases that we've seen from customers. And along with the Sony guys, I think it shows a real breadth of value that companies can derive from these technologies.
Thinking about the importance of collaboration across hardware and software, which tend to be distinctly different and sometimes even competing domains, tell me about the two-way collaboration between NX and Immersive. How does that work?
We mentioned before that the biggest challenge that most immersive tools have is that they often require you to export the data and bring it into another tool, like another software package. Or in the best case, it might open from within your CAD package, but it kind of locks out your ability to do any changes to the design. So we've mentioned it a couple of times, but the big message here and the big difference between what we're doing with Sony and their XR head-mounted display in NX compared to other tools is that it's very deeply integrated into the software. And what that really means for the customer is that whilst they're working on their design, they can work on it interactively in NX in an immersive view. So they're not restricted on doing any data export. They can always work with the live digital twin, the live engineering data. And we know from speaking to many companies, including Sony at a number of these events we've done throughout the year, from CES to Realize Live and Hannover Messe, that security is a huge consideration for these product companies. And if they can avoid exporting their data out of the trusted tools they have like NX and Teamcenter and keep it within those secure environments, that is a huge value add for them. So for us, that was, as well as the live interaction with the CAD data, keeping it in those secure tools like NX and Teamcenter was a huge part of the design consideration when thinking about this collaboration with Sony.
From Sony point of view, I want to add some comment about Immersive Designer plus NX. So to produce Immersive Designer plus NX, yes, that software is Siemens products, but we do the collaboration, as I mentioned before. So that our XR head-mount display team has tightly connected to the Siemens software team, Immersive Designer team, this almost 1 or 2 years. So for example, our engineer visit the Siemens office and sit down together, and also they do the more good user experience, like interaction and user interface wise. So those collaboration work, we produced our solutions more intuitively.
Ben, for those of our listeners who haven't seen the Consumer Electronics Show keynote, can you share how Oracle Red Bull Racing plans to leverage NX Immersive Designer and the Sony XR HMD? What was their experience like being introduced to this technology, and how did they see themselves benefiting?
It's a great question, and a fascinating company with very unique challenges. So as you know, Formula One as a sport is hosted weekly. They have a race every week, and they have to transport the entire show, including all the cars, people, logistics, everything from location to location. And week to week, each team, including Red Bull, is making many design changes to the vehicle itself and shipping out new parts to enhance the vehicle. So naturally, they have engineers both traveling with the vehicles to the races and also back at base in the UK. So for those guys, being able to collaboratively do those design changes in an immersive way means that they can really speed up that validation process and speed up the time from design to part. So this is a huge advantage for the Red Bull guys, and I know that they have tracked for many years now the number of design changes they've been able to make in a given season and correlating it to the number of points they've won. within the races. So they really see that rapid design change being a key driver to their success. And we think that the combination of NX and Sony's XR head-mounted display is going to really help enhance that again over the coming years.
And what have users been saying so far? What has been people's reaction around the world?
From Sony side, so about hardware-wise, so we announced this at the CES, and after that, several events, we do the presentation at the customer-wise. And also that we received many feedback from customer and the media reactions. And overall feedback about hardware is quite positive now. And especially comment from the media who tried our products and our experience is that they focus on the very quality of pictures and controller uniqueness. And their comment is basically the comparing to the competitors' products like Apple or Meta's products. And their point is Sony's product hardware is kind of a unique position we have than Apple and than Meta's head-mount display.
So since CES, we've been out to a number of events throughout the year, including our own customer events, Realize Live. And I think we've done about 1,500 demos to different customers throughout these events so far. And we've had an enormous flood of feedback, which has been overwhelmingly positive. I think I'd probably pick out a few things that have really struck out to me. Number one is people really understand and appreciate that tight interaction between the Sony XR head-mounted display and NX, and the ability to interact with the CAD data in real time. That's a real game changer, and people, they see the value that brings, but as I mentioned, both to the security of the data, but also the ability to make those designs directly within the immersive environment. The second thing I think that people have really fed back positively on is the controllers. They appreciate that they've been designed specifically for creators, and whilst they might look different and maybe take a little bit of getting used to for a few minutes, overwhelmingly people have intuitively understood how they work and how they are designed specifically for these kinds of workflows. So that's been incredibly positive. And I think the third and final thing for me, which as somebody who doesn't wear glasses, Greg, I know you are a glasses wearer, is Sony's accommodation for people that wear glasses. It wasn't something that I'd considered, but the goggles themselves, they actually slide in and out, and they accommodate people who wear glasses so that you don't have to take them off, which obviously enhances people's experience of what they see within the graphics window themselves. And this is something that perhaps can't be said for some of the other head-mounted displays on the market. So that was incredibly well received by glasses users that we've spoken to over the last few months.
Before we go, I'd love to know, what are you most excited about with this launch?
The most interesting things is in my career, Sony's, I produce many new products, and I do the many times of the announcement event at Sony. But this Siemens and Sony announcement was very unique for me. So because totally different industry, totally different customer, and totally different opportunity to show our products, our case. That's my first experience of this launch. So I'm very excited at this Siemens and Sony collaboration announcement. Of course, we are now before the product delivery. We will deliver product at the end of this year. So at this timing, we have not delivered yet. But at product announcement and communication with customer, that's quite a new experience for me.
Personally speaking, this has been the coolest project that I've ever worked on in my life. There's nowhere else in the world that I could be doing this, working with an amazing brand like Sony and bringing such a unique product to market in an area that I have a lot of interest in. But equally, having spoken to so many customers and people at these events over the last 12 months, I just can't wait for people to start using it and actually feed back to us the benefits and see them using it in production. That's the thing I'm most excited for.
And between this collaboration with Siemens, I love the kind of Siemens person. So especially Ben, and we have a very tight communications. Every week we do the communication, and our engineer and the Siemens engineer, I mentioned, to sit down together and create one product together. This collaboration is very fresh experience for me.
We hear the term AI all the time, so of course we can't go without asking, how might immersive engineering interact with the use of AI in engineering?
Yeah, it's another huge topic, industrial AI, within Siemens at the moment. I mean, speaking specifically about the design and engineering domain, which is where we live. Siemens NX has had AI capabilities for a number of years now. The one that springs to mind is generative AI. So we've had the ability to define a set of parameters with a project or even a part, and actually have NX optimize the geometry for that part based on those inputs, whether it's mechanical properties, physical shape and size. So companies I know have used this extensively already. But I think tools like this are going to really start to increase across the portfolio that we have. And I think being able to, as always, experience those parts and those designs immersively is another a great benefit to that. There's other big enhancements we've made around the UI. So being able to use AI to automatically select or predict what you're going to select next. I think those kind of workflow predictions using AI are also going to be a huge benefit, especially when it comes to new interaction methods like in immersive, where you don't have all of the buttons and keys and mouse in front of you. You're going to want the computer to do some intuition around what you're planning to select or do next within that immersive environment. So, yeah, very excited to see how those things develop over time.
Is there anything else you'd like to let our listeners know about NX Immersive Engineering?
I just have one other point which I think is really interesting to think about, which is, we talked about these interaction methods, traditional mouse and keyboard, and how that's evolving. We really do see this technology as a way to make engineering really fun and exciting, and more interactive, more visceral, more of an experience. And we really do believe and hope that that's a way to attract the next generation of engineers into our industry. We need talented people to be creating the products and services of the future, both at Sony and the rest of our customers. And we really believe that this immersive engineering technology, combination of Siemens tools and Sony's XR head-mounted display technology, is going to inspire that next generation of engineers. So we're also very excited for academic institutions, universities, students to get their hands on this as well and see what they can do.
And most importantly, can you remind our listeners when this is being released and where they can find more information and get hold of it?
We haven't announced the final release date yet, but we're targeting that to be the end of the year. And if you want more information, you can find out more at siemens.com.
Well, we will certainly be trying that out when the time comes. And for our listeners, we will have links in the show notes for you to find out more. Ben, Henry, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you both and hearing your perspective on XR technology. Thanks again to Ben and Henry. We hope to speak with you again soon. Thanks also to our listeners for tuning into today's episode. Join us again next time for more discussions about the latest in design innovation and software applications. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our podcast on your favorite platform. And if you're enjoying the content, please leave us a review. I'm your host, Greg Arnott, and this has been the Next Generation Design Podcast.